Alrighty, so we are back now for video number 3 in building my first video game series, I guess, using Unreal Engine 5. In this video, I am starting out here up on the screen with organizing my items, all of the items that I've brought into my scene so far, which is trees, boulders, some roof elements. I've also brought in a Niagara system, some bushes, water, and a few other things. So I'm just starting to get those folders set up there. I created a folder for trees, boulders, FX, which would include like the Niagara stuff. What else did I include in there? A few others. You can kind of see them up on the screen. Yeah, collectibles, and I'll probably add some more as the build goes on. In this video, I'm gonna pull in the Brushify landscape material and set that up. I'm also gonna pull in the ultra dynamic sky. I wasn't gonna do that until later, until I had built out more of the scene, but I got a little eager and impatient and I wanted to pull that in sooner than later just to kind of start to see how it all looks. And then I also work a little bit with setting up my world partition system. I had never done that before, but in my previous video, I mentioned that I was having issues with elements not loading in and me having to pin them every single time I worked on my level. And so based on my research, I found out I had to fix my world partition system. So I set that up in a little bit later. Okay, so jumping back into the builds, again, I'm going to go back to this village area that I'm building out. I kind of want to get this a little bit more developed, so what I'm starting out doing here, like I did in the last video, is kind of erasing some of these placeholders that I had just to kind of mass out where the edge of the map would be in this corner and represent some cliffs and stuff. So I'm going to flatten that out with my, I think I used the landscape erase button, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through my library. You can see there I'm going to pull in a bunch of boulders, and usually what I do when I start to fill a scene is I'll just kind of make a little sighting area, I guess, if you will, and pull in just a bunch of different stuff and kind of create like a palette to work with and start to use those for my scene. I decided that I wanted this to feel a little bit more mossy and green. I wanted this kind of to feel like there's moisture in the air, and you know, of course that kind of goes along with what's happening above with that overhang where I've got vines and ferns and stuff growing. So the reason I say that is there's tons of different boulders and rocks and stuff to pick from the Quicksel Bridge and Megascans and stuff. Some of them are more of like a gray tone, which would kind of represent a drier climate. Some of them are more red tone, which kind of would, in my mind, represent more of like a desert kind of scenes. So I went with stuff that has a little bit more of like green and warm kind of brown tones. Again, see, to kind of match that roof element there too. The roof element's got some moss and stuff growing on it, and I just want this to kind of feel a little bit like it's in a dewy sort of place. Also, just a really quick tip, when you're browsing through your library items, let's say you go into a mossy boulder or whatever, and you open that folder up and all of those little icons in there are like that checkerboard. I'll include a little clip up in the left hand corner. All you have to do is select all of those icons and move your mouse a little bit, and it kind of like regenerates those icons. So I figured I'd just include that in there in case you're wondering. Okay, so what I'm trying to do right here is create kind of like a little window out to kind of the other world, if you will, because I have these like floating islands that are kind of off in the distance. I think it'll look really cool in evening light, and then once I add fog and add some, I don't know, plants and stuff on those floating islands, I think it'll look really cool. And I want it to feel like you're on one of those floating islands and you're kind of just looking out to the other ones. And my thought is thinking long term. If, you know, once this game is complete, if I'm able to release it on Steam or something like that, I might do, just depending on how it does and if I'm happy with it at the end, I might do kind of like an expansion where maybe you can go to one of those other floating island areas and kind of that whole island will have like a whole different vibe to it. So I don't know, we'll see. But the whole point of it is I want this level to feel like you're on one of those floating islands, kind of looking out into the nether kind of space, I guess. So as usual, I kind of save and then stop and play my level every so often. Make sure you save a lot. I know it could be my computer, but and I have a computer with pretty decent specs, but Unreal Engine 5 tends to crash randomly depending on what you're doing. I've noticed for me sometimes it happens when I've loaded something in, like a large component or item. I've also noticed it kind of happens sometimes when you are adding in a lot of like a landscape material, a master material. So anyway, my point is just save often. I think it has an autosave feature, or it does have an autosave feature, but still just to be on the safe side. So here you can tell I'm kind of walking through some of those rocks and stuff, so you just have to edit those and make a collision mesh on them. I talked about that in my last video, so I won't go over it again, and so in terms of how I'm modeling the landscape and where I'm placing boulders and stuff, trees, houses, etc., it's kind of just what I'm envisioning in my head. There's no real right or wrong way to do this in terms of how things are laid out. I mean, ultimately, it's just kind of up to you and your imagination. And I think this is the fun part of game dev, is just the creativity part of it, the artistic part of it. It can be whatever you want it to be. I'm kind of going for more of like a realistic kind of aesthetic with this game. But in the end of the day, it's a video game, and I can have this be a floating island in the sky, and I can put a tree and a boulder and a house and glowy orbs and stuff wherever I feel like I want them. So ultimately, what really helps get that feel and look of realism is just layering different rocks, trees, plants, bushes, scene props, and then once you get your sky in there, your fog, it all really starts to come together. Here in a minute, I stop adding elements to this particular area, and I kind of transition into adding a landscape material. For this build, I'm just going to be using one of the preloaded master landscape materials that came with one of my Brushify packs that I purchased. I would say if you have the money, buying a Brushify pack, if you can, is super worth it. That landscape material, for example, comes preloaded with like 8 different materials, and they blend really nicely with each other, as well as all the boulders and the trees and stuff that come with that pack. There's also some distance meshes and stuff like that. So I'm going to do that here in a second, and then after that, I'm going to add in ultra dynamic sky. Okay, so adding in the Brushify Landscape Master material. So what you're going to do first, which I did not record, unfortunately, is you're going to select your big landscape element, and then off to the right hand side where it says landscape material, I'll circle it here in a second on the screen, you're going to add the Brushify landscape material. Clicking on your landscape element, you're going to go to landscape mode, and you're going to go to the paint tab. You can kind of see that up in the upper left hand corner. You're going to see all of the preloaded Brushify materials listed there, but what you have to do is click those little white plus signs on the right hand side and make it a weight blended material, and you have to select a folder of where this is going to be saved, and you have to do that for each one of these. Now these Brushify landscape master landscape materials come with like 8 or 9 different ones preloaded in, so you have to do that for each one. I suggest going to the Brushify website and watching his tutorials. He's got some of his own videos kind of explaining why you have to do this and how to do it. I would just suggest watching his if you're interested, but this is why I like using the Brushify packs, because you do not have to put together a master landscape material. I can do it, I've done it before, but this is so much easier, and everything, like I said, blends with the other meshes and stuff that come in the Brushify pack. So it makes everything look very cohesive, and everything is the same color tone, etc. He also includes some distance meshes that also match with these landscape materials, so it's really nice. You'll notice these landscape materials are kind of based on the height of your landscape mesh. So as you build your landscape mesh up, the sides of the cliffs and stuff will automatically change to kind of like a rocky texture, and it'll kind of spawn little boulders and rocks and stuff. It's really cool, and you'll kind of see that as I work with this here in a while, but I really do suggest a Brushify pack or two if you can afford it. So it's really nice when you zoom in close on it, you'll see that it spawns actual grass blades and rocks and pebbles, sticks, that kind of stuff. So also the grass kind of blows in the breeze along with the trees that came with that Brushify pack as well. So it just gives the whole level of feel that there's like a breeze blowing through it. There you can kind of see the sides where the landscape elevation changes, and it kind of comes in with some little rocks and sticks and things like that. So it's really easy to use. It's really nice. The grass has some weeds and things mixed into it, so it's really nice. Here, if you want to change the material, you just go to your landscape mode, click paint, and then you can pick any of the other materials. Like right here, I'm going to create a path, and you just paint it. And this is the nice part about using this pack, is that each of the materials that's included in this landscape master material kind of blend with each other. So like the background base kind of sand color is going to be the same regardless of which of these materials that you use, and it all kind of just works together. Like on that one, for example, you can see there it spawns in some debris and some sticks and weeds and stuff, so it's really easy to use. And you can see here as I do kind of a dry run through how all of those rocks and now the master landscape material that I've added really start to come together and play really nicely with each other. And it really is starting to look very nice. There you can kind of get a hint of the light bloom and the fog and stuff, and it looks really cool. I think once I add in the ultra dynamic sky, it's really gonna come together. So this is like the cave area of my level, and I've already started to run into some issues. So when I'm not in simulation mode, my water shows up, but for whatever reason, when I do a simulation or play from, the water disappears. And I still have not figured out what is causing this issue. This one has been frustrating for me. I've done tons of research on it and trying to figure out what's going on here. And so this one ends up being a big issue for me to kind of work through that I'm still trying to figure out. Okay, so I can't figure the water thing out, so what I end up doing is switching over to adding in ultra dynamic skies. So the first thing you need to do is you have to clear out any of the light elements in your level. There's a specific tutorial on how to do this, again, by the person that made ultra dynamic sky, so you need to go through and watch that. I would suggest that. So that's why my whole sky has turned black, because you have to kind of clear out those elements. Otherwise, it creates some conflicting information with the ultra dynamic sky system. That's a whole complicated kind of blueprint thing that's pre-set up and everything. So you have to really clear all of that other stuff out. And that's what I'm doing there off to the right, is I'm going through and making sure in my little outline content browser that all of those things are gone. So unfortunately my content browser is on my second screen, and I didn't realize this part wasn't recorded, but all you're going to do is you're going to go to your Ultra Dynamic Sky folder, and you're going to pull in, just drag and drop into your scene, the Ultra Dynamic Sky blueprint. And you're going to see that here in a second as I pull it in, and then it'll automatically light up my scene again. So I purchased Ultra Dynamic Sky with my own money. I'm not affiliated with them in any sort of way. This is not an advertisement, but what I would say is if you have limited budget for a build that you're working on and you can only buy like one plugin, I would highly suggest buying this one. The options with it are pretty amazing. You can set your day and night cycle. in your game, you can set how long you want it to be. You can change how the sky looks both day and night. There's kind of the warm evening sun. There's the cool tone kind of morning sun. It also comes with an attached kind of blueprint for the weather system that works with it. So you can turn this into kind of like a snowy environment, a foggy environment, a wet environment. It's really actually amazing. I think it might be the most amazing plugin that has been made for Unreal Engine to date. So right here, I'm just going to start playing with some of the settings. You'll see here in a minute, I think I ended up setting it to a day-night cycle. So as I kind of play with the game and start to build my level, you'll see how the sun moves through the level and how the clouds kind of change the shadows. And it's actually quite amazing. I love this plugin. So it kind of comes with these preloaded categories. You can kind of see me working with those off to the right. The first, I don't know, handful categories are strictly just for your clouds, your cloud movement, your cloud density, the type of clouds you have. So simulation is going to let you set your day-night cycle, and you can determine how long your day is, your night is. You're going to have control over your sun, how big it is, how the strength of it, the color tone of it, the moon, how big that is, where it is in the sky. You can turn the different moon phases on and off. You can decide which side of the moon you're looking at. Like, it's actually amazing. You can set how many the star density, the star brightness. You can add aurora borealis to the sky. You can change the colors of the aurora. So it's pretty incredible. So what I'm gonna do here is add some point lights. I'd like to get just a hint of the underside of that cave to be glowing, kind of as if there are some external like lantern light sources on these houses that are kind of bouncing off the overhead cave wall. So that's what I'm placing here, just to kind of get a feel for what that might look like. That's way too bright. I just want it to be just a hint. I just want you to be able to just barely make out the edges of the rocks and the plants and stuff above. So I need to turn down the brightness or the intensity on that way down. But I'm going to go through and add a few of these point lights around the level just to kind of start scoping out where I want my lighting to be. And so right here, what I'm going to do is jump back into my Niagara. I brought this up in my last video, but I made these, what are supposed to be kind of like fireflies or bugs in the night. I made them kind of a glowy red color, but they really should probably be more of like a green kind of a glow. So I'm going to edit that now. I'm just looking for that Niagara system in my content browser. And then I'm going to go to it and edit it, and you're going to see here in a second I'm going to edit the undertone of that system there so that it's more of a green color. So back at the village, I'm going to add those lights to those outside houses. Again, just kind of trying to set the stage for what the village looks like at night, like as if there's some kind of lanterns hanging outside of the houses. I'm making that color temperature on the lights more warm, and I'm doing that with the color temperature setting. You could also just change the color of the light to be more of like a reddish or orange color. So the way that these lights are showing up here on this playthrough, they're still way too bright. They're way too concentrated. I need to expand the area that they're glowing on and take the intensity way down, because in reality, if it's going to be kind of more of like a lantern with a lit candle on the inside, they're not going to be that bright. They should just be more of like a hint of a glow, really. So I need to change that. And also, I think at some point in time, I need to figure out how to make that more of like a flickery kind of a light. Since I do have a breeze going through my scene, and if those are candlelit lanterns, those would kind of have flickers. Alrighty, now to edit the world partition to load all items. So I ran into this issue in my last video, and I'll talk about it here for a second. If you look off to the right there, you click on World Partition, and you have to edit the extents of what is loaded in with your level. I was having this issue in my previous video where every time I would open my project to work on it, a lot of the items would be missing, like boulders and trees and things that I had placed, and I would have to keep repinning them. And it would happen every single time I opened my level to work on it, and I couldn't figure out why. So I did some research, and I found out you have to edit the extents of your world partition system. So basically this map here shows everything that is loaded in as part of this level when the level opens and starts. And so you kind of just have to highlight the whole area that you're working on. I think this is probably beneficial in terms of saving memory and stuff when you're working on much larger maps. For my map, because it's small, I'm going to load everything all at once, but I'm sure if you're working on a much bigger game with a much bigger level and a lot more components, that would really bog everything down. So you would have your level load different areas, if that makes sense. But since I don't have different areas, this is a pretty small map, I'm just going to load everything. And seriously, I cannot get enough of how beautiful the lighting is. Like, look at how cool the reflections look off of that pond water. That's still too deep. I do not want my character drowning like that. But look how beautiful the shadows it creates are kind of a glowy red color as they're shining through the rocks and the trees here. I just love Ultra Dynamic Sky. It's amazing. So yeah, now I'm just kind of doing another test playthrough, kind of running around the level, just seeing how the lighting is looking, and I'm loving it so far. Of course, you have to use your imagination with some of these houses. I'm just using blocks and stuff for now until I fill this scene out. Again, I still consider this to be pretty early on in the process. There's still so much more to do, adding all of the collectible items and sounds and camera angles and all of that other stuff I still have to do. But for now, I really like how it's coming along. Okay, so I'm going back into my cave area where I had previously placed some of my prototype collectible items. I've set these up with a blueprint so that when they interact with your character quote unquote destroys them. That means that once your character walks over them, they disappear from the level. So I've already set that up. They still need work in terms of how they look, the color. I'm gonna add a sound collection to it. So for now, though, I'm just gonna start duplicating these and copying them through the level, kind of near the start area, and making a little trail into the village. I think because the whole point of this game is to be more of like a cozy game that you play at night. Again, no deaths, no kills, no fighting, nothing like that. This is just going to be about kind of ASMR, ambiance, relaxation, just collection, just something you don't really have to think about. I wanted to build it like it's a real, game in terms of like the quality and how it looks, but just not having to put a lot of thought behind it and just kind of being able to relax and play this when you need to de-stress or just distract yourself. So I think because of that, I want to place a ton of these collectibles throughout the level. That way this level can kind of last indefinitely, I guess. It could last how long you want it to last. You can set your mind to collect every single one of these orbs in the entire level, which would take longer, or you can just play it for as long as you feel like collecting and then just turn it off, if that makes sense. So there's no real kind of end to the game. I guess you could say the end would be after you've collected every single one of these orbs in the entire game. But even then you could still run around and kind of watch the sky turn different colors and stuff like that. I don't know if I'll have these respawn after a certain time. Like maybe, for example, after you've collected all of them, maybe I can set it to respawn all of them all over again. So you could just kind of play this game indefinitely. I'm not sure yet. I haven't thought that far ahead, but for now, what I'm going to do is I'm just kind of working with these, kind of testing them. You can see as I run over some of them, they disappear, and then a couple of them don't. The ones that don't are kind of faulty. I'm not going to be using those. And so I end up deleting those out of this level and just working with the one that does interact with my character. And if you notice, kind of as I walk through those items, there is an item collection counter off to the left. I need to work on that interface so that that wording is a little bit bigger, and that there's some kind of permanent item collection counter that stays up on the screen. So I'm just going through here and adjusting the topography so it's not so deep. I just want this to look kind of like a shallow puddle, like water's been dripping in this cave area and just kind of puddling here. The material is not correct. I wouldn't have grass in here, so I'll be changing this material at some point, probably to like a muddy, sandy, or rocky texture, but right now I'm just working on the actual landscape. I think for the cave, it's gonna be, I'm gonna add some dripping sounds. And then also, I'm thinking that I might have a variety of collectibles. So once I figure out what my user interface is going to be, like my item counter, I think I'll probably have a variety. So I'm thinking I'll have kind of a treasure chest. Maybe I'll have a few hidden treasure chests. And then obviously my glowy orbs or fireflies, if you will. And then maybe also in the cave, I'll do some glowy mushrooms or something that you collect. And then maybe in another part of the level I'll have something else that we can collect. I'm not sure yet, I haven't decided, but I do think that there'll probably be at least maybe 4 or 5 different items that will be collected. So here I'm just kind of running around and making sure it's never deeper, the water is never deeper than waist depth. So what I'm going to do now is edit my collectible item. I had previously tried to add this kind of confetti explosion Niagara system to the item so that when the player walks over it, it kind of explodes in the air or kind of sends out little confetti debris like that. I haven't been able to get it to work, and to be honest, I'm not even sure I like that effect, so what I'm going to do here is delete that Niagara system out. I don't think I need it. Once I add the sound to the item after you walk over it and collect it, and then change the color of it, I'm not happy with this kind of fiery red glowing orb look. I kind of want it to be more of like a purple or pink glowy orb. Once I add those to it, I don't think I really need the little explosion effect, so I got rid of it anyway. Here I'm just kind of looking at my material graph. I did make this material, this fire material, myself. In another video, I might get into some of my material graphs, but for now, in the build, I'm just going to focus on actually building out the level and the scene and adding sound effects and sounds and components and meshes and that kind of stuff. I think material editing will be maybe toward the end. It's not necessarily the thing I want to focus on. I'm more interested in actually the build of it, but other people might find it useful and they might want to look at my material graph to see how I achieved that kind of fire effect. And as I'm working with this and some of the other stuff, you'll see that I kind of often hover over these different buttons and kind of look at the drop downs and stuff. That's because I'm still learning what all of these different functions and things do. There's just so much to learn and figure out with using Unreal Engine 5, so I mean, I know enough to be a little slightly dangerous with completely messing something up, but there's still a lot of different features and things that I don't know yet. So right now what I'm doing is I'm just trying to edit the size of the orb. I want it to be a little bit bigger, so I'm just going to start working on adjusting the height, or the size of it, sorry. This is way too big. I do not want them to be that big, so you'll see me kind of just working with the size here. So we're a little over an hour on this video, and I think we'll probably call it a day on this one. In the next video, I'll keep working with my collectible items. I'm going to change the color of them. I'm going to make them a little bit smaller. I'm going to start to place them a lot more around the map. I'm also going to start working more with some of the other areas with the landscape. In the forest area, for example, I'll start pulling in some buildings and adding in some more trees. I'm also going to work on my invisible floating kind of staircase up into the tree line. And then I also run into some major issues on the next one, and I'll kind of just give you a heads up on what those are. Number one is the water. I end up having to delete out all of those water elements that are already there, the pond, as well as the water element in the cave, and the stream that's kind of in the gorge. I haven't really focused on that area, but there is a stream down there. I don't know what happened. I've gone back and I've tried to review the footage, and I still cannot figure out how I got there or how that happened. The other issue I end up running into is a portion of the landscape does not generate the material that I applied to it with that Brushify material, and I cannot figure that one out for my life. So you'll see that in the next video, and then I'll just keep just kind of filling out the level, adding in some additional ground cover with flowers and boulders and other stuff. So anyway, if you made it this far in video 3 and through the end of this video, thanks again for watching. Hopefully you found something helpful or interesting, and we'll see you on the next one.